Jon Moxley enters the G1 Climax, CM Punk trolls social media, and Vince finally admitting that creative is broken. It's all coming up next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's All Out. So Ralph, we're recording this Sunday morning just after Dominion and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And the opening match, Jon Moxley was involved, a less than 4-minute squash match. Afterwards, he goes on the mic and says he wants in on the G1 Climax. Obviously, this is huge news because this is a tournament that determines who faces the IWGP Heavyweight Champion at Wrestle Kingdom. Right now is Kazuchika Okada after successfully defending his title against Chris Jericho. How excited are you that Moxley is going to be entering the G1 Climax?
Definitely excited. I think the thing that is most interesting about the whole Moxley situation is we know that he is signed supposedly exclusively to AEW, and he's going to be there once they start taping for TV.
Right.
So it's interesting to see him actually, have this schedule where he's going to work as much as he's plans to. But it's also encouraging. It's a good look for him. It's good for the business because he is a guy who was from WWE, who is fairly well known. So to have that type of exposure, a guy like that, or even a Chris Jericho, we saw what he was able to do for New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's good for the business, and it's also good for Moxley himself because the hope, I'd imagine, is he can get some exposure there. He could build up a little bit of a following, and he can bring that following over with him once AEW does go on television.
Yeah, definitely. And, I'm excited for this just because of the different matches that he could have. Yeah, we already know he had a really good match with Juice Robinson. In my opinion, Juice Robinson's best match that I've seen from him. Obviously the match here with Shota Umino was only 4 minutes, so it was a squash match. It made Moxley look really good, fine. But it depends who else is going to be announced for this tournament. Hiroshi Tanahashi, Minoru Suzuki. Maybe we see a rematch with Juice Robinson, Zack Sabre Jr. There's a lot of potential great matchups that you could see here in a matter of a month.
Right.
So I'm excited for that too. Here's where things could get interesting. We know that All Elite Wrestling's television starts in October, and that's when Moxley will be more full-time with All Elite Wrestling.
Right.
Does he actually end up winning the G1 Climax? And if he does, how does that affect All Elite Wrestling?
Yep. You're right. That is the thing that's going to be difficult because you don't want to book yourself into a corner. Yes, you want a guy like Moxley on your roster if you're New Japan Pro Wrestling for all the reasons I just said. He's a marketable guy. We know that one of the biggest goals for New Japan Pro Wrestling is to move westward. So, he could be a big key to that. He's certainly a guy that can expand their audience, but again, you can't really have a guy go over or win the tournament if he's not going to be there for past that time once AEW starts on TV.
True.
Imagine. So, I don't think it's likely to happen. I think he'll make it fairly far in the tournament, but I don't think he's going to win.
Well, here's the thing that actually favors both AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling is that their schedules aren't as time-consuming as it would be with WWE with the 300 days a year doing like 3 house shows a week, plus Raw, plus SmackDown, plus a pay-per-view possibly. All Elite Wrestling, it seems like they're going to be doing their TV taping, maybe 1 house show a week, and that's it.
Yep.
So New Japan Pro Wrestling, it's a very flexible schedule how they do their shows. So Moxley can do both.
Right.
It is possible. We've seen that with Jericho when he did his stuff with New Japan and he went to do stuff with WWE before he eventually did All In and his Jericho cruise, his Fozzy stuff. So it's obviously possible. I don't see him winning the G1 Climax just because You know, there's a lot of guys in New Japan Pro Wrestling that are there full time that I think
Yeah.
could look really strong and end up winning and getting that that shot for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. The guy that I think could, if he actually enters the tournament, which I think he would, it's just not official yet, is Tetsuya Naito, who just won the Intercontinental Championship back from Kota Ibushi. His quest to become a double champion, I think they further that by having him win the G1 Climax, just like he did a couple years ago, and we get Okada versus Naito to main event Wrestle Kingdom.
Yep.
I think that's the way they go, but you know, time will tell as you know, things go on. But the other thing that we found out on Dominion is that Kenta, formerly known as Hideo Itami, shows up at Dominion, and he's going to be entering the G1 Climax. So now we got this former WWE all of a sudden invading New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I'm excited to see what Hideo Itami or Kenta has to offer in the G1 Climax too.
Yeah, definitely a guy who was fairly well known outside of WWE before he actually, you know, went to NXT, and I think they put him in 205 Live.
Yep.
They didn't really do much with him, and that's partially due to injuries. But yeah, I agree. It's encouraging to see guys like this who are well known, like Moxley or even Kenta, go to New Japan Pro Wrestling or even All Elite Wrestling, because you know there is this movement that is going on outside of the WWE. So it's encouraging to see that, knowing that we're going to get different types of matchups and guys have opportunities outside of the quote unquote like the machine, if you will.
Right. And of course, the first night of the G1 Climax is happening on U.S. soil. It is July 6th, Dallas, Texas, the American Airlines Center. I think this is going to be very huge for New Japan Pro Wrestling. We know how successful the G1 Supercard was at Madison Square Garden. If they're able to reciprocate that in Dallas, you know, this makes their Western expansion much easier.
Yeah.
And here's where I think New Japan has to start considering this. I know we talked about a possible partnership with All Elite Wrestling and what their current situation is with Ring of Honor. If I'm New Japan Pro Wrestling, I have to start considering not necessarily a talent share with All Elite Wrestling, because it seems like the flexibility is going to be allowed with All Elite Wrestling and their full-time wrestlers. But if I'm New Japan Pro Wrestling, I have to start thinking about what these AEW guys are doing when they're not on TV, when they're not doing matches and house shows or whatever, and bring them over to the New Japan product and kind of separate themselves from Ring of Honor.
Right.
In my opinion, Ring of Honor is dead right now. Their main event picture is not great. Their tag team division is okay. You know, you got the Villain Enterprises, you got the Briscoes, but the Kingdom. So like there's stuff there, but there's nothing that I think could draw more people to the New Japan product than what they already have. Right. All Elite Wrestling, you have the Elite, you have Cody, you have Kenny, you have Jericho, Dustin Rhodes. Yep. There's people there that can draw to the westernization of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I would just consider I don't know if leaving Ring of Honor would be the right word, but just changing my options.
Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense. Like you said, if they really truly intend to move War West, they want to expand their product to the Western part of the world, you have to consider working with AEW, because you're right. The guys outside of the WWE, the big names like your Omegas, the Young Bucks, those guys are in All Elite Wrestling. And when you look at Ring of Honor, yes, there are a lot of talented guys on their roster, but there's not really that one guy outside of maybe Marty Scurll who's really a bigger draw. So we'll see what happens. I definitely think the talent sharing, guys going back and forth, is going to happen much more than we initially anticipated, because we've already seen it with Moxley.
Mm-hmm. And Jericho.
So yeah, I think it's going to happen more so than we actually thought.
Now let's move over a little bit. Let's stick to AEW and their current roster and someone that may be joining their roster. We always talk about it every at least 2 to 4 weeks of CM Punk joining AEW. And now that it is announced that All Out is happening August 31st in Chicago, Illinois, CM Punk's hometown, the rumors start to, escalate now more than ever. And of course, CM Punk, being the smart man that he is, understands that. And he's actually using social media to his advantage by trolling them. He went on Twitter saying, he was tweeting somebody saying that we're going to carve an X into some guy's Oreo-filled belly. I guess referencing the Moxley video where he's carving the X onto the bar. And then the guy responds, and then Punk again responds by saying, "Oh my God, AEW confirmed." So people, of course, saying, "Oh my God, this is him saying he's going to AEW." But then he goes on to Snapchat and then says, in several snaps, guys, oh my God, I heard a rumor. It's happening. I'm proud to announce the newest signing of AEW, Prince Karras. Yeah. Now, if you're not familiar with Prince Karras, he was a character in Smoky Mountain Wrestling in the 90s. Obviously not CM Punk. So definitely trolling social media. Do you think this is just him having fun before he actually goes to AEW? Or is this him trying to give people the hint like, all right, guys, can we stop with the CM Punk to AEW confirmed stuff?
I mean, I definitely would like to see him in AEW at some point. Because it would mean a lot just for the historical part of it, right? To have him actually come back, come out of retirement, having left WWE on such bad terms.
Right.
And he's still a draw, no matter what people want to say. Granted, he's been away from the product and wrestling for a very long time, but he still can invoke I mean, people still chant his name at WWE events when we go. You hear it on TV from time to time. So I hope he ends up there. But from everything he said in recent interviews, just based on that, he says he's very happy with where his life is. He's happy doing the commentary work for the UFC. So, you know, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Right.
I'd like to see him there, though.
Now, I also agree with you in a way that I think this is his way of telling people, stop with the CM Punk to AEW confirm tweets and posts on social media. He is happy with what he's doing in his life with the mixed martial arts stuff, with the, he's recently in a movie that's going to be out soon, some horror movie. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. If you guys want to help me out, put it in the comments. So I think wrestling is just so far behind him that he doesn't necessarily need to come back to wrestling.
Right.
If he does, obviously AEW would be the best move for him, but you know, he's just happy where he is.
Yeah, and given the recent comments we've heard from, you know, either Dustin or Moxley about the creative, which we're going to talk about in WWE, I really don't think that's the right place for him to go now because, you know, he didn't leave on the best of terms, and he wanted to do a lot of things with his character, and he was upset about how he was booked, not given the WrestleMania opportunity that he thought he deserved, and I'm sure most people would agree with that. So going back to WWE, I think that's probably the last thing we'd see. So if he's going to return to wrestling at any point, I think it's going to be AEW.
Yes.
Hopefully we see it.
I agree. Now let's talk about the WWE Creative. I guess on the Wrestling Observer newsletter, they talked about the Moxley interviews that he's had and talking about how creative is just so bad and Vince is ruining creative. And, you know, I guess Meltzer started asking around with different talents. He didn't specify which ones, but he said from various people with various relationships with Jon Moxley saying basically what he said is true. Yep. You know, he is pretty accurate what he said. And even there was someone there that doesn't have a greater relationship with Moxley. He said, yeah, he's right. And I guess it's gotten to a point now where Vince is starting to realize that creative is broken.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Dave Meltzer, he is a reliable source, but can be wrong at times, just like every other source out there. So, do you think Vince believes that creative is broken? And if he does, how does he fix it?
I think Vince knows there's something wrong with his product. I'm not convinced they're prepared to do anything about it. Now, the reason I say that is, you know, there's a term, you know, what have you done for me lately? And I remember them coming out on Monday Night Raw, the entire family, including Triple H, saying that you are now the authority, talking about the fans. You're going to get new matches. You're going to get this. There's going to be change. And granted, there's been some different matches and guys put in different positions, like Kofi Kingston, for example. But it's the booking and the storytelling and the creative that is very much the same. You know, the show whether it's Raw or SmackDown, has essentially remained the same from that point when they came out and said that they were going to provide change. And what could they really do? What are they going to do? Call up NXT guys? They've done that. They don't do anything with them. You know?
I mean, most of them they haven't, but they have done stuff. I mean, Lars Sullivan's getting a semi-push. Lacey Evans is in the women's championship picture. Heavy Machinery's in the SmackDown tag team picture, even though they're not on TV.
Yeah, I get all that, but the problem with all of this is what we're talking about, the creative. They don't make certain guys feel special, so when you beat them, it's even worse. You know? So, for example, look at the tag team titles.
Which ones? They're both bad.
On Monday Night Raw. I had to ask you, it was like, who the hell are the champions? And I thought back, it's Ryder and Hawkins. And I can't even tell you the last time I saw them on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
So if you want to rebuild your tag team division, you know, that's just one of the problems. You could have somebody go over them, and the biggest storyline doesn't even revolve around them, the tag team champions, as far as the tag team division is concerned. It revolves around a terrible, storyline between the Usos and the Revival.
Yeah.
So
at least we know that a good match can happen between them. It's just, and this is the problem that I think WWE has, is I think they rely too much on the fact that they know the matches will deliver. The problem is they don't give a casual fan a reason to invest in said match.
Yep.
We've seen this time and time again with AJ Styles, whether it was with Samoa Joe or Shinsuke Nakamura or even Daniel Bryan. Yep. His recent match with Seth Rollins. They were great. He had good matches. Some of them even great. But the stories leading into those matches, you're like, why should I care?
There's no drama, right? And the example I gave to you, if you're a Yankees fan or a Boston Red Sox fan, when those two teams play each other, there's an emotional investment and it means more. But if the New York Yankees go and play like, the Blue Jays, okay, it could still be a good game, but there's no drama, there's no investment, so people don't get into it as much. And I definitely think that's one thing that's missing from the product right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what Vince intends to do to fix it, if he actually is going to try to do anything about it. I actually listened to Talk is Jericho, another really good podcast with him and Dustin, and he said a lot of the same things. He kept referencing, saying, when Vince was happy all of the time, it almost seems like he's been so close to the product for so long. I mean, this is all he's known, that, yes, he's still a great businessman, but has he lost that edge or that advantage from a creative perspective? Has he thought of everything he can realistically think of, to where now the business, or at least WWE, just doesn't feel fresh anymore?
It could be the fact. I mean, he bought the company from his dad in, I think it was 1980, maybe 1979. Again, someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. And he's had the business since then. So you're talking 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 4 decades of owning this business and basically being the guy where the buck ends.
Yeah.
Of WWE Creative. You are the one guy that makes the final decision, regardless of it's right or wrong, regardless if it's creative or dull. You're the one that's doing everything. Now he's got the XFL coming back. He's got, public investors that he's got to talk to all the time. Yeah. He's got NXT that Triple H is telling him, hey, we got these guys that are good. These guys are bad. We got to work on he's got to deal with that. And then you got 5 hours of weekly content on cable TV. Right now with USA, eventually you got Fox that's going to get SmackDown, and Fox Sports 1 that's going to have content that they want on their network too. So there's a lot more invested than what it used to be back in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. So he might be overwhelmed. And, he's 74 years old.
Yeah.
That's a lot to take on for anybody, let alone someone that's 74 years old.
Yeah, and from everything everybody says, whether it was Moxley or Dustin or anybody you talk to, like, the work ethic is there. Like, he's there till like 3 a.m. and working all the time. But when I watched the special they did on Triple H on the WWE Network, and it really seems like that is like a younger version of Vince for the reputation that people give Triple H, right? As far as, he's married to Stephanie and he's afforded these opportunities because he's married to Stephanie, married into the McMahon family. Granted, all of that is true, but I mean, that guy, when you look at everything he's done for NXT and how great the product is and how hard he works, I don't know what's going to happen with WWE, but it seems like he'd be probably the right fit to take over.
Right.
But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Right. Now, I think one big thing about the creative that is an issue, and like I said, we have all these deals, and the Fox is saying they want one thing, USA wants another thing. The obvious deal with Saudi Arabia, they want other things. So it all affects creative in the end because, Fox says, hey, we want certain guys on our product. And then USA is like, well, we want those guys too. So now we have the wild card rule, and it's stifling some guys that would have been on TV. Now they can't be on TV because we need to have Roman Reigns and Shane McMahon on both shows right now. Stuff like that. Saudi Arabia wants Goldberg versus The Undertaker. So now we have to put TV time into that. And we know how that match went. It was not great. It was botchamania for, 9 minutes. And you got Matt Riddle saying that Goldberg's the worst wrestler ever. People would agree. Some won't. But at the same time, it's like, at what point when you're Vincent Kennedy McMahon and you're running this company, do you go, listen, I understand you want this, but we have this that's much better. Mm-hmm. That if you just let us do this, you'll be happy with it. We don't need 53-year-old Goldberg landing on his head from a tombstone because he let go too early. Yep. Or, Undertaker landing on his head from a jackhammer because Goldberg's concussed and can't carry the guy before he hits the move.
Right.
Or Roman Reigns on both shows because we have a guy like Ricochet that's not on TV, or a guy like Aleister Black that's doing backstage vignettes, or Heavy Machinery that just gets thrown on TV one week and then the next week we don't care about him, or tag team champions on both shows that don't appear. That's what you have to tell these guys. Like, I understand it's your money. You got to spend it what you want, but let us do our thing.
Yeah, well, I think unfortunately the only way the product changes is if they start to lose money. And I certainly don't want that to happen because, I love WWE. I just wish it was a little bit better. But if they start to lose money and investors start to question certain things, that's when I think we'll start to see drastic change.
Yes.
We already saw the first couple episodes of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown following Double or Nothing. It doesn't seem like they intend to change much. NXT, in my opinion, is the superior product, even though they want to consider that, maybe the minor leagues of WWE. Better stories, better matches. Guys are much more over with the crowd. You can actually connect with them. And we see what happens once they get called up. Many of those guys lose their thing that made them special.
Right.
So
right.
I don't know. I think the only way that this changes is if they start to see a difference in what they're actually supposed to be making revenue-wise.
True. I think one big thing that I think a lot of people are upset about creatively, what's on TV, is what's going on with the Money in the Bank.
Yeah.
I think
I'm one of them.
Yes. I think we agree for the most part, but we disagree on one big thing, and that is what happened on Friday. So Brock Lesnar attempts to cash in. Paul Heyman drops the briefcase as he's tripping over the ropes. Seth Rollins gets the better hand of Brock Lesnar, and the cash-in does not happen. Now, we've seen this bait and switch for the last couple of weeks, and it's upsetting fans. I personally think it was actually the right move to do this from a creative standpoint, because I think, Brock Lesnar, then this whole storyline has been, yes, he's the focal point of the story, but at the same time, it's everyone else making the decisions for him. It's like WWE is promoting that he's going to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Then Stephanie McMahon says that you're insulting the Money in the Bank because you're turning it into a boombox. And then Paul Heyman was the one that said that he's cashing in on Monday. But then Brock finally takes control of the situation and says, no, I'm cashing in Friday.
Right.
You don't tell anybody when we're, you're not promising when I'm cashing in. I'll say when I'm cashing in, so I'll cash in Friday. When he finally does it, it's Paul Heyman that messes up, distracts Brock, and Seth gets the better hand. So now Seth knows that Brock has to pick the opportune moment, unannounced, to cash in.
Right.
So I think if WWE wants to change creative and wants to make a right move here, don't have Brock Lesnar show up on Raw until at least Stomping Grounds is done.
Yeah.
Because we know the match is announced, Seth Rollins versus Baron Corbin. Let that match happen. Let the storyline happen. And then you can have Brock come back and tease Money in the Bank cash-ins or when he's going to come. Or don't even announce when he comes and he just shows up.
Right.
Because now people have gotten the mentality of when he shows up, he's going to cash in. So now it's the boy who cried wolf. So when he finally comes, he's finally going to cash in, and you get that moment of surprise like, oh my God, he finally cashed in when you least expected it. Now people are expecting every Raw he's going to cash in, or every pay-per-view he's going to cash in. I think this is actually very good on the creative aspect of things. Maybe this was long-term planning, or it just happened that each short-term episode led to itself and go, oh, we can actually do this. So I don't know what you think about it.
I don't mind a flubbed cash in here and there, like having him attempt to cash in and not have him do so successfully. The problem I have with it is they've been essentially lying to their audience for several weeks now, saying that he's going to cash in, or whether it was Brock or Heyman or Stephanie McMahon. And to me, that's just their way of building interest in the show, which they're supposed to do that, and getting people to watch. But I think the fans are getting to the point now where you keep telling me that you're going to, offer this part of the product or this creative line or whatever, the part of the storyline where he actually cashes in, and it hasn't happened. So that's got to be frustrating for a lot of the casual fans, because if you're watching Raw one week, or you watch it knowing or thinking or expecting that he's going to cash in, and he doesn't cash in, it's kind of like fool me once, fool me twice, that old saying.
Right.
That's the problem I have with it, because if they didn't tease the cash in for Super Showdown, I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't have necessarily paid attention to it. And the whole thing, it kind of devalues the whole Money in the Bank when they make these pre-announced, cash-ins. The whole mystique of the Money in the Bank is it can happen anywhere at any time. So if that's the case, all right, have Brock cash in or have him don't cash in, even if it's unsuccessful. Don't announce it. Don't tell us it's going to happen.
But don't forget, Brock Lesnar is a heel, so doing these kind of antics just creates more heat for him.
Yeah.
And for when he cashes in, and maybe it isn't unsuccessful, and Seth goes over on him, it just creates more positive things for Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with it. I understand where people's frustrations are, but I don't think it's as bait and switching as people are thinking it is. I think they actually end up telling a good story here where Brock thought he had full control of the whole situation, and Seth now, by attacking him at Super Showdown and having the upper hand at the end, can be like, no, you can't just pre-announce when you're going to cash in, because I'll be ready regardless if I just had a match or not. I'm going to be ready. So you better make sure that when you cash in successfully.
Right. Yeah, they have to explain those things and pay attention to the smaller details, which they often overlook on their products. So that's part of the problem. They don't actually, explain why things happen. We still don't know how he even got inserted into the Money in the Bank match.
True.
So, we'll see, but I'd just like to see them stop announcing that he's going to cash in.
Right. Well, got a long way to go before AEW comes onto TV and people think they have to make a decision between WWE and AEW, and maybe by then creative will be fixed. But let us know what you think of everything that we talked about here, between Jon Moxley entering the G1, talking about CM Punk trolling social media, and how would you fix WWE Creative in the comments below. Don't forget to share this all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. Subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. We're trying to hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling's all out. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.